Would you vote to approve a Supreme Court justice who did not agree with your stance on abortion?
I don't have a litmus test. That's not where I head. I look at the qualifications of the person. I look at his background, his experience, and I will look at all issues. Abortion will be one of the issues. Views on death penalty will be another issue, and I could go on and on. But what we are looking for is somebody very, very simply that doesn't make law, that doesn't set aside the robe, if you will, and become somebody who legislates, but is somebody who literally looks at the words of the Constitution and in a strict fashion interprets the words of the Constitution. And that's what I'm going to be looking for in a Supreme Court judge. And I might also add, I had this responsibility as the governor to pick judges. And my goal always was to find somebody who would be fair and impartial and act like a judge when they put the robe on.
I don't think there should be litmus tests either, other than to say what the qualifications of the person are. Their understanding of the law, going back to the very first Supreme Court case that actually established judicial review, that we have an independent branch called the judiciary that is just as important as the other two branches of government to maintain that tripartite, that three-way system that our constitutional founders thought was so important is critical. Now, what did they look to? They looked to an understanding of the law, whether the person understood the role and the power of that position to interpret the law. Now, this obviously, their reading of the Constitution, their reading of common law, their reading of judicial precedents, all fit into it. But it is about who the person is, what kind of judgment they do bring to it, and that they actually do what is in the interest of the judiciary and of the United States of America, that there's a whole host of things that are brought onto any particular decision, whether or not to support a Supreme Court justice.
I agree with the other candidates in terms of not having one set litmus test, but I guess, yeah, I kind of have a litmus test in that what I'm really concerned about is the corporate power in this country and how people seem to be having less and less power, and that big corporations are buying our elections, they're buying our political systems, so we have more and more corrupt government, and the government is working for the interests of these big multinational corporations. I remember studying William Jennings Bryan, who was the great commoner, and he stood up for the interests of the common people. He tried to resist the power of the corporations to get in on the Constitution and have the right of personhood. This was a big issue back in the late 1800s, and the corporations won that battle, and they keep getting more and more power, and now we have a greater and greater disparity of income, with big CEOs making over as much, the typical CEO makes more than 440 workers. And so it's bigger than the typical, they make more than a typical town in Nebraska. And it's just corporate control of our country is out of hand.
You've talked briefly about the amnesty program. How would you solve the issue of illegal parents that have US-born children? Should the parents leave the country, and what would happen to the children?
Well, I actually think in crafting a comprehensive immigration reform plan that we need to recognize a couple of things. One is that we should punish people who did break the law and not punish children who didn't actually knowingly make a decision regardless. But that means that we do need to have several things. The reason we are having these difficult discussions now, given your question, Oscar, is that we've had failed immigration policy wholesale. And this is not just our southern border, like a lot of people talk about. It's our northern border, and it's our eastern and our western borders as well. That we don't have strong borders, and that allows anything to come into this country, to include threats to our national security. That we had now a system that is so broken that even the 9/11 Commission, after the horrendous events of 9/11, said that we need to get tough on our borders for national security reasons too. And that we should go to the root of the problem, and that is that 95% of all shipping containers coming into this country are not checked. That we have porous borders across our country. That the root of the problem is actually a failed and broken immigration plan, but it's a failed and broken Washington that refuses to actually do anything except just kick a can farther down the road.
Yeah, I'm against breaking up families. I think we need to go on a case-by-case basis to try to remedy the problem. And again, if they haven't been breaking the law, I think there needs to be a path to citizenship. If they're not breaking the law, they're good working citizens, a member of churches, a member of, involved in the local schools, I think we need to cut some slack and work with them, because we have had these situations where the families are split up. But what we need to do too is change our foreign policy so that we're not using our military to take control, for instance, of Latin American countries and take control of their economies so that it's better for corporations to move their jobs to third world countries. And it's oftentimes the big corporations that are benefiting from the losses in our communities as well as in the losses in these third world countries. And so they're coming here for economic opportunity that are being taken away in their countries. And we need to change our foreign policy to be more humane as a nation.
The question you raise actually is solved by the United States Constitution. If you are born in the United States, you are a citizen of the United States. And it's very straightforward on that point. The greatest disservice those parents can do to those children, however, is to fail to deal with the illegal way they entered our country. And that will be a downside for those kids throughout their life. That's why you need a very straightforward plan, just like I've laid out. No amnesty, border security. If you are here illegally, you have to return. You can't jump in line, and you have to re-enter our country in a lawful way. I am the only candidate running for the United States Senate that has a forceful, direct plan on this. We both have our plan, Scott and I, up on our website. His says we'll pay some fines, we'll pay back taxes, then you have a pathway to citizenship. That's amnesty. That just very simply is amnesty. I really believe very straightforward plan that I've laid out is exactly what you need to do.